we're all in the process of becoming something unexpected. It's just a matter of, are you aware of it? Are you sitting in the front seat driving, or are you sitting in the back seat screaming, but you're going?
You are now listening to the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some wonderful tips and techniques to advance yourself coming up next. Today's episode is sponsored by yours truly, Dominic Dom Brightman's wonderful book, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. Grab it on ebook, audiobook, or paperback book and share this gift to your friends, family, heck, even no matter what season it is, for that wonderful person in your life that needs to advance their next level in their career or just needs a quick pick-me-up to get through their day and beyond to thrival level. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, it's the Going North podcast, and we got another super special, awesome human for you today, courtesy of podmatch.com. That's right indeed, the site with all the fire and the mics. That's right, where the mics stay on fire indeed. And we got one heck of a guest who is going to light her metaphorical mic on fire, baby. That's right indeed, an incandescent inferno ordeal, baby, because today's guest in particular is a thought leader, folks. That's right, a thought leader in conscious business. She's a consciousness doula, as well as a multi-award-winning, best-selling author of a wonderful book, Trusting the Currents. Let's give it up for Miss LP herself, the legendary and pretty Lynnda Pollio. How you doing today, Lynnda?
I'm great, Dom. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm very excited about this. You have a really good vibe.
The feeling's mutual indeed. I like your vibe indeed. That's right indeed. One of the few folks on the site, as I mentioned before the call, where it's like, oh wow, I actually feel some positive vibes from her words. It's like, all right, this is good. She is in. She's in. She meets all the boxes, all the checks in the boxes.
Thank you.
That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Well, speaking of boxes and checking, I'm pretty sure I forgot a whole bunch of stuff, and I imagine you probably didn't see yourself where you currently are at the age of 13, did you?
No, I didn't see myself at the age of 13, 23, 33, 43, and probably 53. So it's been a long journey. And 13, I couldn't even have imagined where I am right now.
That's right indeed. That's right, because I believe you're originally going to be like the female Bob Ross in the nun outfit, right?
Yes, my first two things when I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a nun. I was very religious. I was raised Catholic. I was very religious as a child. I always had a very strong spiritual sort of connection, and I was very creative. So I wanted to be an artist. So I wanted to be an artistic nun, and I really didn't become either, but I'm a little bit of both, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's right. She's definitely both indeed. She's definitely both indeed. That's right, because she's an artiste that paints with her pen. That's right indeed. She helps folks stay woke indeed. Because I heard you're actually the first ever chief consciousness officer back in your days as an executive.
Yeah, I started out in advertising. Well, I kind of stumbled through my 20s and into my 30s, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I always had sort of this feeling that I was meant for something, but never really could figure out what that was. So I stumbled into advertising, which was creative. So that kind of gave me that sort of outlet. And I started working in new business, which was new at the time, and I was good at it. So I ran new business for agencies for a number of years. And then I took care of my father for a year before he passed. And afterwards, I heard a voice say, go to Sedona. And I ended up going to Sedona. I didn't know why I was going, how long I was going for, and ended up staying for 5 months, having all kinds of mystical experiences. And when I came back to New York, I knew I just couldn't go back to my old world, that I needed to make a difference in the world and bring, sort of consciousness, hopefully into the corporate world. So I began in the conscious business practices, which was just kind of beginning at that time. It's kind of was at the advent of solar energy and organics and sort of the shift into a healthier lifestyle. And so I've gotten that involved in that for a long time. And then I became the world's first chief consciousness officer for a global marketing consultancy. And then I went into 9 years of 24/7 care of my mother. And in that time, I started hearing the voice of an old Black Southern woman, and she asked me to tell her story. And so we set out on a journey together, and that became Trusting the Currents.
There we go. The TTC. Indeed. That's right, indeed. And like, definitely gotta give my kudos to you for being caregiver 24/7 for your mom. Like, I definitely have a big heart for caregivers since I myself had to be a part-time caregiver for my father who had to go through his last days on earth too. So yeah, definitely
Uh,
heart goes out
People
to you
don't
for that.
really understand the experience unless you've gone through it. It takes you into a whole nother world, and it really teaches you things about yourself and takes you into parts of your soul that you didn't really know were there. Suffering is an amazing teacher, and it feels very contracting when you're experiencing it. But I really think that what it does is it kind of expands parts of your soul so that you become someone new, sort of new and improved, I think, in a lot of ways. I'm much more spiritually mature than I was before I went through that experience. And so I learned a lot from it, but it was extremely difficult. It was the most difficult thing I've done in my life. I'm sure you understand that.
Oh yeah, yes indeed. Big respect to you for that too. 9 years, especially if I'm not mistaken, that was actually right after your dad passed too, right?
Well, my no, my dad had passed several years before, and I had gotten involved. That's when he passed was when I got involved in conscious business practices. That sort of awoken me to consciousness itself, kind of reawakened me. I was always a very conscious child. I was communicating with insects as a kid and having all kinds of unusual experiences, and like I said, I was very spiritually inclined. But it kind of, I went into school and I went into business and I went into what I thought I was supposed to be. And it was in the process of taking care of my father. I hadn't seen him in 17 years. He was an alcoholic. And that kind of broke the family at one point, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. So I'd gotten a call from my uncle that he had had a massive heart attack and he was dying, and did I want to say goodbye. So I ended up driving to Pennsylvania from New York, where I was living at the time, and spent the day with him. He was unconscious. I did energy work. I've been doing energy work for many years. And he came out of his coma, and a few weeks later he was out of the hospital, and he said he wanted one more year with us to sort of make up for, the drama of our childhood, because of that. So I kind of hung in there with him for that year, and really, I think, helped bring the family back together again for a lot of healing. And he died redeemed, and it was a very profound experience, I think, for all of us. And then it was right after that that I heard the voice say, "Go to Sedona," and that experience reawoken my spirituality in a massive way, and that began shifting my life in a new direction. And I think it's probably one of the reasons why Addie Mae was able to reach me. I don't think she could have reached me when I was in my previous self.
Oh yeah, definitely indeed. So my goodness, energy work. So does that mean Reiki is under your spiritual tool belt per se?
I started, the first thing I learned was therapeutic touch, which was created by a nurse and a healer, and it's taught in nursing schools pretty much, normal now. And then Reiki was the second thing I learned. And then I've worked with all the different healing modalities, whether it's working with crystals or sound therapies, and just my own, calling on my own higher wisdom for healing. I've never done it for a living, but it's just sort of part of who I am. And I work with whoever kind of crosses my path that needs it
Oh
and
wow, this
wants it.
really is interesting. I'm like, wow. And I'm guessing so this was before the dad. So what led you to discover all of those healing modalities? Was that something that was part of your college years or
No,
something
that
during
was That was after college, and I was in my 20s. I was in New York, and I was always like this. My whole life I was communicating with nature, and I was raising baby birds that fell out of nests, and I was always kind of the healer and the caregiver my whole life, even as a child. So it was not unusual, and I just became drawn to the healing arts when I was in my 20s, and didn't know what I was going to do with them. Never was comfortable really hanging at a shingle as a healer. I just wanted to be able to activate them and be able to work with them, to help people. So that's how that happened. It just sort of, I just was drawn to it. It wasn't anything it wasn't a conscious decision. It found me. I didn't find it.
Ah, there you go. That's right. That Paul to Damascus moment. That's right, indeed. The light found you. Like, get off that
It,
horse
it,
for a second. Let me talk to
it
you.
definitely found me. Even though I bobbed and weaved for many years trying to avoid it, it just kept tracking me.
It's like, all right, we're about to be the FBI. That's right, Spirit Edition. You ain't escaping. Get over here. You gonna learn this light.
Well, it's not easy. Anyone who is going through any kind of real awakening process knows that it's not an easy process, and you have to deal with a lot of inner traumas that you are not really in touch with, and they start coming up to be seen. And there's a lot of struggle and dark night of the soul. You have to go through a lot of darkness to really see the light. There is a relationship between darkness and light. So it's really not for the faint of heart, but once you go through it, you are profoundly changed, and you would never go back.
That's right, indeed. Yeah, no one really could imagine going back once you get to that level of enlightenment. It just seems impossible. One of those few things that are actually impossible indeed once you have that. So my goodness, my goodness. And I'm guessing, was that also part of what you did as Chief Consciousness Officer? Like, did any of that like get, I guess,
Yeah, I
borrowed
mean,
or?
I had to be careful what I communicated, because languaging is very important, and what you have an intention, and the way you language it will determine how people digest it and accept it. So I tried not to be too woo-woo in those days, because I was working with the CEOs and CMOs of Fortune 100 companies, and there was nothing woo-woo about them. So my whole focus was on working with what I call the human technologies of wisdom, intuition, compassion, empathy, forgiveness, and gratitude, and trying to get them to see that these are technologies, just as digital technologies exist as external technologies, human technologies exist as our internal technologies to move us forward and help evolve us, and help with working with their consumers and with their employees, and just sort of, it was really an education process more than anything else, to let people know what consciousness was. People didn't even know what the word meant. I had to explain what it was. And then I had people wanting to change the word. And I would say no, because if you can't say the word, you can't be the word.
There you go.
So so that was, I've always been sort of ahead of the curve on all this. So that's how I got involved in consciousness in general, but then also in business consciousness, because it just dovetailed into my corporate background. And then slowly over time, I kind of pulled away, and I'm all about, that's why I now call myself a consciousness doula, because for me, what I really do is I help people become more conscious of themselves, and this, of who they are, of what they're communicating, of what traumas are making decisions for them. And I want them, to truly like awaken in themselves. So, a doula is all about birthing, and everyone's familiar with birthing doulas. They help mothers bring babies into the world, and now there is a whole movement about death doulas, people that are trying to restore dignity to death and helping people understand what death is. And I worked with my mother and my father both, and helped them, usher them through that portal. And so when I was trying to decide really what I wanted to be now, and it really isn't so much like a profession as wanting to hold that space in the world, just like I held the space for a chief consciousness officer. And now there are other people in business that are doing a lot of work in consciousness. I now want to hold the space for a consciousness doula to help birth consciousness in the world. And I'm very much involved with helping people understand what frequencies are and how to work with their internal frequencies and go inside, which is, our internal universe is as expansive as our external universe, but we are not taught about it. And we are actually held back from it because once you go inside and really learn who you are, you can't be controlled anymore.
That's right. We will no longer be your puppet, y'all. Puppet master days over, y'all. Consciousness indeed. Consciousness indeed. And like you went through it fast again because I passed interview the human technologies. I believe there's 6 of them, right?
There's 6 of them, yeah. I mean, those are the main ones. I mean, there's a lot. For me, as I said before we started, the answers lie in the heart. That is my, if consciousness is a big donkey, and there's all kinds of parts of consciousness, I always pin my tail on the heart because consciousness is something we don't really understand. It's global, it's cosmic, it's earth, it's everything. It's universal, it's God, it's everything. We don't really know what it is. We could say what we think it is based on our belief systems, but no matter what the truth is, if it's not activating through the human heart, it's not really helping human beings that much. So, knowledge is great, but I like knowledge that actually brings people into their hearts.
Beautiful. Brings people into their hearts indeed. So my goodness, so are we going to write a book on that, on the human technologies indeed? Because those 6 separate subjects, if I'm
I
not
don't know.
mistaken.
I've had people say that to me before. We'll see. I would rather work with someone. How my first book came to me is I never expected to write a book. I was never going to be an author. I never had that in my plans for my life. So it took me 10 years to write Trusting the Currents. It took me 2 years to channel Addie May. And then it took me 8 years to edit it because I really learned how to write during the editing process. And it was a major education for me. And the book, I never expected to publish it, but Addie May was a stern taskmaster. She would not give up, and she continues to not give up on this book. She really wants her wisdom to, kind of get out there in the world. So, but I have started a couple more books, and but I just as I was taking care of my mother when she finally passed, and I finally had I could get back into my body and my brain again, I decided to move from New York City to Sedona. This is before the pandemic, but in the process of moving from New York to Sedona, the pandemic moved into New York City. So we gave away 90% of everything we owned and came here with 4 suitcases and went into lockdown. So we're just beginning to kind of come out of it now. And I actually, I think, have just begun to be restored from that caregiving experience. It really took me a full 2 years to kind of remember who I was. And it wasn't so much, when I was going through it, I talked to myself about, I'm going to go back to who I was. I'm going to go back to what I was doing. And then I realized there is no going back. I really just have to let go of everything I had been before and take whatever is in me and whatever skills I have and whatever experiences I have and kind of move into something new. And that's kind of where I am now. So I have all these different sort of, I think, sort of potentialities in front of me now. And I'm waiting to see which one wants to be heard.
Sounds beautiful indeed. Sounds beautiful indeed. So as you went through the years doing the math in my head, I'm like, wait, that's 20 years. Wait a second. That sounds a little off. So in the 10 years in total of writing the book, was it like the 2 years in the channeling? Was it like periodical messages? Like, how did it even start?
The channeling started, I was in New York. I was working as a consultant in conscious business, and I was working on a project, and I heard an old Black Southern woman, like she was standing next to me, and she said, "It's not what happened to me that matters." And that became the first sentence of her story. And it was I had been getting what I would consider high knowledge my whole life. I've always been getting knowledge from somewhere, and knowledge for other people, knowledge when I'm speaking to someone, I'll get information for them, but I never had heard her voice before. And so it was still shocking to me. And I stopped, I wrote down the sentence. She spoke a little bit more. I think it was like another, maybe a paragraph. And then I felt her leave. And then I thought that was kind of weird. So, but I went back to my normal life. And I think 2 or 3 days later, I felt her again while I was working, and I wrote down again. And in the beginning, it was very staggered. I didn't know when she would be there. I would just all of a sudden feel her presence. And I used to call it the indigo abyss, but because for some reason I felt her being indigo. And it was very, very deep. And I would have to kind of go through this uncomfortable feeling of sinking into that indigo abyss until I hit a warm current. And then once I felt that current, that's when she connected to me. And we wrote Stream of Consciousness. She just dictated to me. So I never knew what I was writing until I was writing it. And sometimes I'd be, out on the street, and all of a sudden I'd feel her, and I have to grab a pen and pencil, and I'd have to write something down, and then I'd bring it home and I'd put it. She always picked up where she left off. So I never had to worry about where the story was going, because it was just one long stream of consciousness. And then I was working on it for about a year. I had her last name, Aubrey, and she gave me the name of all the other characters, but I couldn't get her first name. Her first name, I kept changing it. It never felt right. And then it was the anniversary of the Birmingham church bombings that killed the 4 little girls. And as soon as I saw the picture of Addie Mae Collins, I just literally, it was like a bolt of lightning hit me. And I knew that was her name. So I called her Addie Mae. And for the rest of the time I wrote the book, I had a picture of Addie Mae Collins taped to my computer. And I wrote to Addie Mae. And so about a year into the work in New York, she told me to go back to Sedona. So I got on a plane and I went to Sedona. And for the next 9 months, I basically sat with the computer in my bed. I'd get up in the morning, I'd put it on my lap, I'd wait for her to come, and we would write together for 3 or 4 hours. And then she'd leave. And that was it. I couldn't write anymore. If I tried to write more, I had to throw it out. This was the first, and it all came out in heavy Southern Black dialect. I wrote the way I heard her voice. So when I didn't know I was writing the last words until I wrote the last words. And when I wrote the last words, I burst into tears, because I knew I had finished, and I had gotten to know this family over the 2 years as much as my own family. And I was very attached to them, and I was very attached to Addie Mae, probably in sort of a weird way. But I went back to New York and I put the book away for a year. I was in another world when I finished writing it, and I never heard her voice again in the same way. When she finished that last sentence, she left. And I said I used to take care of baby birds when I was a kid. And when you raise a baby bird, they'll fly away to eat, and then they'll come back to eat. And then once they learn to eat, they'll fly away. And if you call them, they'll chirp, but they won't come to you anymore. It's their way of going back to their world. And I would feel her chirping. I never heard her voice again, but I would feel her presence. And particularly when I was afraid, she thought fear was extremely funny. I would hear her laughing every time I was afraid. But a year into it, I never thought I was going to go back to it. A year into it, I just felt this very strong force to start editing the book. And that began 8 years of editing it, giving up on it, editing it, giving up on it, until I finally knew one day that it was ready to go out into the world. And she changed the name of it. It was called something else for most of its life. And when it told me it didn't want to be called that name, I said, well, you'll have to tell me your name, because I don't know what to call you. And about 2 weeks later, I heard Trusting the Currents in my head. And then I read the book with that title, and I realized that's exactly what the book's about. It's about trusting the currents in life, no matter where they're taking you. So I finished it while I was in the midst of deep caregiving for my mother. And I decided to self-publish it because here I was, this middle-aged white woman writing a first-time debut novel about a Black family. So I went, okay, probably no one was going to be interested in this. And so I decided to self-publish it, and it took me a year and a half. I worked very hard. It was way more work than I expected it to be. But I finally got it out. And 3 days after it came out, my mother fell and shattered a femur, and I went
Mm.
into care like intensely. So I didn't really promote it for the first couple of years it was out. The only thing I did was start entering awards, and so far it's won 13 literary awards. So, and it's been read by people all over the world, all different races, all different genders, all different ages. Addie Mae really speaks to everyone's heart and makes them feel, as she's telling you her story, she tells you your own story. So it's been, she's been the most profound influence in my life.
Ah, beautiful indeed, beautiful indeed. I wonder if any of the relatives of Addie Mae's family back then are still alive, and if if they
Well,
did.
the funny thing is, when I finished the first draft, I came back to New York, and by coincidence, if you believe in coincidence or synchronicity, they had just caught the guy 30 years later who did the bombing. And the New
Mm,
York Times was doing a series of articles about the families of the 4 little girls. And they had done one article about Sarah Randolph, who was Addie Mae's sister, who was in the church and was blinded. And so
mm,
I really felt strongly that I wanted her to know the influence that her sister had had on me. And she did have an amazing, her face, was in my face the entire time I was channeling this book. So I called the reporter for the New York Times, and I told him my crazy story, that I wrote this book and I want to send this very early manuscript. It was the first draft, to Sarah, and he gave me her address. So, which was, it wouldn't have happened now, but
yeah.
he gave me her address. And so I just sent her a manuscript. I just told her I wanted her to know the influence Addie Mae had had on me. And that was it. I actually didn't have any expectations, and I sent it off and I didn't hear anything. And a year goes by and I move into, and at the time I was talking to agents about maybe, being with my book. So I was having a lot of problems with the race thing. And I was getting really discouraged and feeling like I had been completely crazy doing this. And I moved into a new apartment, and I had had one agent from a really big agency want the book, but he wanted me to make all the characters white. So, because it's not a book about being African American, it's a book about being human. But I heard her voice. She was not white. So I said no, and that was the end of him. So I was really discouraged at that point in time. And I thought maybe I had, wasted my time, and maybe the book was just for me, because I had learned an enormous amount from Addie Mae during the time that I was writing her story. But I plugged in my new phone into my new apartment, and about 15 seconds later, the phone rings and I pick it up, and it's an old Black Southern woman asking for me. And it sounded just like Addie Mae, just like Addie Mae. And it was Sarah. And Sarah had
Wow.
gotten the manuscript, and she said she had finally gotten around to reading it. And she, had said that it was a really good book, and that Addie Mae would have been proud of, her influence on it. And I asked her at the time, this is several years ago now, I said, I'm white. I said, do you have any problem with that? Because, it really did bother me, but I couldn't control it. It was just what was. So she said no, because she could see the love in the book. And
Mm,
that statement from her completely transformed my relationship with that feeling that I had. And I felt that if she could accept it, that I didn't really care what anyone else said. And so I just moved forward, and didn't really listen to anyone anymore, and did the best I could to help people understand that this was, I mean, I used to ask Addie Mae all the time, like, why me? Of all the people you could have picked on the planet, like, I was way down the bottom of the list. There was nothing. I was a woman from there was literally nothing that was, and she said that, and she told me that's why, to show what two women who share the same compassionate spirit can accomplish when they come together. And she was all about celebrating our differences, and knowing that when we go back to wherever we come from, that we're all going to be one big soul again. So why not celebrate the way that we fracture into all these different colors here? So that was a big experience for me.
The beautiful one at that, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, do y'all feel like y'all are connected via past lives at all? And she just decided to find you?
I have no idea. I would love to know. I went to a psychic one time, and he told me, again, like, I don't know, but he told me that Addie Mae and I had lived together in New Orleans,
Oh,
and that she had been my nanny. And I was a young white girl who was 5 years old. And she had had a very difficult life. Her name was Loretta Hancock. And we were from Montpelier, Louisiana. And
hmm.
that we had both died in a fire together, that we loved each other, that my parents sort of ignored me, and her children had been taken away from her, so we sort of glommed onto each other. And he said that she used to hold me in her arms as a baby and tell me her stories. So that's why she came to me when, and why she picked Addie Mae, I don't know. And whether it's true or not, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, all I know is that she was very clear about her words and her intentions with me.
All righty. Definitely interesting indeed. Definitely got to be one way to go, though. It's like, wow, explosions twice in the same lifetime. That's got to, in
Yeah, it
different
was a big,
lifetimes.
it was a big fire supposedly, and we died. We didn't die together, he said. He said, but we died trying to find each other.
Ah,
So there could be something to that. I don't know. But it really, like I said, I have a very strong connection to her. I remember when I came back from Sedona the first time, and I had been with this family that I spent more time with, and more in a lot of ways more intimate time with, because when you're writing something, you become very intimate with the characters and the people that you're writing. I mean, they become part of your family, and they become aspects of you, really. And when I went back to New York, I would like walk by cafes and see Black women sitting in the cafes having coffee, and I'd be like, I would literally put my face to the window because I would feel this aching to be part of them, and I could never be part of them in that way. But it was just that moment of being pulled away from Addie Mae had been very hard for me.
I gotcha. I gotcha indeed. Definitely makes sense. Definitely makes sense. But hey, sounds like it's in this inseparable pair. That's right indeed. That's right
Let's see.
indeed.
Also said we were going to be writing something else together, but so far I haven't heard her voice, so I don't know. But I will be forever grateful for her presence in my life.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. So, my goodness, so since you've been on this wonderful tour of podcasting and really spreading the good word about the book and all the consciousness goodness that is out there for folks to really learn about, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often?
Question to be asked more often. How can I help? I would like people to be more helpful to one another. And I think, also, how can I think it's so hard because we're all carrying around all these internal traumas that we're mostly unconscious of. And, your internal trauma bangs into my internal traumas. We both get triggered, and we start fighting over something that we're not really fighting over. We're just fighting over our own traumas. So I think, if anyone could also ask, how do I get in touch with my trauma and my pain? And I think that's one of the reasons why I believe the heart is so important, because people get up in their heads because they're afraid to be in their hearts. They think that's where the weakness lies, but that's because most of their trauma is in their heart. They have had their heart broken in some way in their childhood and in past lives and in ancestral traumas. So, it's really hard to go in there. It feels very uncomfortable. Sometimes you need a guide. Sometimes you need books. Sometimes you need friends, and sometimes you just need to sit in it yourself and allow yourself to feel that pain, and accept it and own it and realize that it's not something to be avoided. It's something to just pay attention to so that it can be released. So I like to have people ask more questions about how do I go inside? I mean, how do I disconnect from the external world that doesn't care about me and go inside myself and discover myself who really does care about me? Once you really discover yourself, you will love what's in there.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And if I'm not mistaken, I guess you had to do that in your late 20s slash early 30s when you were stuttering back then.
Yeah, I stuttered all through childhood. Even I wanted to do podcasts because I really felt like I was supposed to be speaking, and I was terrified of it. I mean, there was nothing that terrified me more than speaking. So I decided to start doing podcasts so that I could become comfortable with it and to learn whether I had anything to say. Because I didn't know whether I had anything to say. And yeah, so I mean, I think it's been a long journey. I think for most people, it's been a long journey. I didn't have the easiest childhood, but I did have a lot of love, even though we had a lot of issues. And I was always a very adventurous child, an adventurous adult, and I took a lot of risks and left a lot of things behind that most people probably wouldn't. But I always had this understanding that we are here for a blink of an eye, and you really want to spend more time with good people and nature than you do with stuff. So I have a little pin that I have up on my fireplace, and it says, to have more, desire less. And I really do believe that. And that's, been something that I've been working on the last couple of years. When I gave away everything that I owned to come here, it was strange to be, at a certain age and all of a sudden not have a spatula. You're like, I don't have a spatula. I have to go out and buy a spatula. I had to go and recreate my life again. And I think we're all in the process of becoming something unexpected. It's just a matter of, are you aware of it? Are you sitting in the front seat driving, or are you sitting in the back seat screaming, but you're going? So take control of the wheel and get all the help you need and all the support you need from community and friends and God or whatever, wherever you find it. And let's go, because, this is not a test.
Are we gonna die? No. We're gonna die. Oh, you'll be fine. We're just hitting some curves, Oh, it's a winding road. You'll be fine.
It is, well, in the end, it's that, in the end, it's okay. If it's not okay, it's not the end. So, we have to sort of believe that everything that we're going through on this planet right now and everything that we're going through in our personal lives and I do believe this. I believe it's really waking us up to what was wrong in the world. We just lived our own little lives believing in our governments and in our corporations and in everything that external forces wanted us to believe. And it divided us in ways that really were unnecessary and not good for any of us. So I think eventually all this chaos will lead us back into places where we will look at each other with fresh eyes again and learn, at least the ones that wake up. I mean, it's never going to be everyone, but we don't need everyone. We just need enough to change the world and make it a better place and get people to realize this is a very short stint you have here. So why don't you just have a good time and, sort of love more. It's way better. It feels way better than hating. Meanness and happiness cannot exist in the same space. You have to pick one.
Yeah, that's right. There's no such thing as happily mean.
No, there isn't. There isn't. You may feel a sense of control over that, but you're not happy. And but people have a hard time letting go of their unhappiness and their meanness because, they don't really have they don't have any guidance. I think more people would change if they understood that there were the resources available to them and there were other people that were willing to allow their vulnerabilities. We're all these vulnerable little things and we act like we're big and strong, but we're not. So once we become vulnerable with each other, we create this whole nother level of strength for all of us. But we got to take the risk. I got to take that leap of faith.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Indeed, that leap of faith, indeed. That's right. There might even be bunny ears and a pogo stick involved, y'all. That's right. Take that leap, y'all. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So my goodness, so if this wonderful book, Trusting the Currents, if it was a food, what would it be and why?
If it was a food, I think it would, let's see, what would it be? It would have to be Mama's noodles. She made noodles. She made them with love and she made them for everyone else to eat and to drip on their faces and to enjoy themselves. And I think it would have to be her noodles. And Mama's a character in the book, and she was the focus of the love in the book. She was the mother character, and she created food, including laughing cow peas, which Addie Mae was terrible at. But it would have to be, noodles. Mama's noodles.
Sweet. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. The magic of noodles, y'all, especially Mama's noodles, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right. You will not become an imposter, y'all. I'm telling you. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but you're still in 2022 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
I think as a woman, I'd say don't take any shit. I would really advise women to respect. You're at your physical power when you're in your 20s, and yet you don't realize it. And you can change the world with your youth and your beauty. And I would like young women to go up to older women and ask them what they should be doing to lead a life that will make them more fulfilled and happy. And in general, I would just tell people to go inside, spend the time. Don't worry about what's going on the outside. The work you do on the inside of yourself is going to have profound effect, not only on your inner being and your happiness, but on your success in the outside world.
Yeah, well, there you have it, folks. That's right, indeed. Don't take no crap from nobody. That's right, indeed. 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 It's so darn true, y'all. That's right. And make sure you get the right mentors, indeed. Just examine their life for a quick second if you can. Make
Ask
sure you're
for help.
getting. Yeah.
I mean, go up to someone that you respect who's older than you and just ask, because age, if it's done properly, has wisdom. And, I think the generations that are out there now don't have the time that my generation did to figure this stuff out. We were able to stumble through decades not knowing what we were doing. But, between technology and how fast the world is moving, you really need help from the wisdom keepers out there in the world, the sage elders that have gone through it all, and that can help guide you, because they don't have any agenda. I mean, you want to find ones that don't have agenda. I mean, this is a generalization. People can be awful at any age, but But, if women in your life, or, men, men in your life that are older and that seem wise, you want to garner that wisdom so that you don't stumble into the same traps that they stumbled into and had to, crawl out of.
Oh yeah, that's right indeed. That's right. She's a poet and she probably knows it, baby. That's right. Because age, if done right, they should have wisdom.
If you don't have wisdom by the time you're like hitting like 50s, there's a problem, and you need like a really advanced course on consciousness. You need to go into it deeply, work with someone, or plant medicines, whatever it takes to kind of get you into yourself so that you can discover who you truly are. Because you wake up one day, I wrote a blog called The Strangest Adventure Yet, and it was about my experience in turning 60. And it is a strange experience, and yet it is really kind of the youth of old age, because you're kind of young again when you turn 60. You're still healthy, you're still in good shape. You have all this wisdom and knowledge and experience. You really don't take much from people anymore. You have a way more sort of solid sense of yourself. So to be able to impart that to people that are younger, I mean, you could take it or leave it. We're all going to make our own mistakes along the way. We're meant to learn things. We don't know what our past lives were like. We don't know what our ancestral traumas are leading us to. So a lot of it is about, getting in, I think, particularly in touch with our ancestral traumas, because we all have them. And then help, having people that are on their way to becoming ancestors help to give us some guidance. And listen, you don't have to take it, but there's such a divide between ages right now, and it really is when it's when all these disparate, when races come together, when cultures come together, and we connect to the heart, and we really realize that, I love being me, but I love that you're you. I love that you're so different than me, because I learn things from you. I can experience your life through me. And I think that whether you're a different age, or whether you're a different race, or a different culture, or a different religion, if we just allow each other to be what we are and not judge it, we could have these amazing, profound experiences with each other. It's just, I never quite get why, and I understand the conflict, but that's why you want to work on yourself. So when you get triggered by your belief systems and cultural conditionings, you become aware that you're being triggered by your cultural conditionings, that it's not you thinking this, it's your mother or your father or your community or whatever, wherever you were raised to believe. And you can think for yourself, and you don't have to follow that same track, which generally is not a good one for anyone.
Oh yeah, that's right. Definitely want to avoid the bad track indeed. Don't be on the wrong side of the tracks, y'all. You don't want to be on that either side of the wrong tracks. Don't do it. That's right indeed. Be in the train. Don't be on the track.
Don't be on the tracks. Trust the current.
There you go. That's right. Trust the current indeed. That's right. That's right. Put on them dragonfly wings, y'all. That's right. Stay
Yep,
high, y'all. Metaphorically.
it's true. Dragonflies are all about transformation. They're born in the water and they live in the air, and they take in all that life has to offer.
Oh yeah, that's right indeed. That's right indeed. So speaking of taking all in and all that life has to offer, folks need to take in all that you have to offer indeed. So for those who want to keep up with all the wonderful stuff you're doing and buy some copies of this book and future books to come, what's the best way for folks to do so?
Well, I have a website. I'm on Amazon. That's probably the best place to buy the book, is on Amazon. But I'm also on iTunes and barnesandnoble.com and most of the platforms. And I'm on social media, all the usual suspects, Instagram and Facebook and Goodreads and all the things that keep us trapped in the world. But we're here for the time being, and I want to help people that are beginning to wake up to the fact that they can be different and more than they have been told that they that they could be, and not from an egocentric perspective, but from a real human perspective. So anyway, you can connect with me, and you can email me at Lynnda@LyndaPollio.com, which is also on my website.
Yeah, there you have it, folks. That's right, indeed. You can find her on The Usual Suspects, y'all. That's right. That was going to be used again in the future, and it'll be spread. It's like, yeah, the past guest name, Lynnda Pollio. She was like, yeah, social media. She calls it The Usual Suspects, y'all. That's right. The Facebook, it's The Usual Suspect. It's come to distract you forever. It's a black hole. Run.
It is. I'm about to actually narrow down because I have so many and I'm not a social media person. It really, I don't really like it, but I believe in what I'm doing, so I have to be on it. It's the only thing I have right now. But I'm going to be cutting down some of my, like I have a Trusting the Currents page on Facebook and a Trusting the Currents page on Instagram, and I have my own Lynnda Pollio. So I'm going to be getting rid of my Trusting the Currents because I just want to consolidate down and have as more meaningful conversations in a more narrow perspective. So I'm working on it. I'm working on taking back control, wrestling control from the suspects.
Hey, well, do what's best for you. Heck, Twitter's actually been pretty good for me, at least with the podcast, anyway.
Oh, good.
Yeah, little did I know that folks actually pay attention on Twitter. Who would have thought?
Well, Twitter is it's very different. I'm on Twitter as well, but I think Twitter is really good for podcasts and for like things like posts. And I mean, I post my book on there a lot, and that I get probably more book stuff on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we do what we have to, and when we believe in what we're doing, we just keep going. And you definitely keep going. You are a man on a mission.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm spreading the chocolate everywhere, metaphorically,
Yeah,
of course.
you need more of
Yes,
that. More of that kind of presence.
oh, yeah, that's right. And chocolate is a present to many. So before we go any further down that rabbit hole, any parting words before we close up shop?
No, I think I've said a lot. But I just want to thank you again for inviting me. I really, enjoy what you're doing, and I, I'm really honored that you invited me on. I never know what to expect, and I never know what to expect when it's always sort of, okay, here we go down the rabbit hole. And you were a really great interviewer, and you have a very good like aura around you. So thank you.
How's it going, my friend? I'm so glad you made it to the end. That shows that you are an uncommon finisher, and I am so grateful for you sharing your ears, your attention, and your time to this wonderful podcast to do something that'll take yourself to the next level. And for everybody else involved in this wonderful program, share it with at least 3 people in your network so that way more folks can not only catch the fire that is on this podcast, but can also be inspired to be their best.